There is a curve most people never see. A quiet bend in the road where the loud ones grow silent and the silent ones finally speak. But not with words. Number, with the silence they carry in their chest like an old violin, tight, trembling, and unbearably still. She never raised her voice. Not once. She didn't need to. Her silence was the kind that unnerves men. Not because it was cruel, but because it was true. And truth, real truth, is rarely loud. He had grown used to noise. The noise of being right. The noise of justifications, of distractions, of constant movement. He thought love was in the action, the chase, the kiss, the apology. But he never noticed the quiet. Not the kind of quiet she brought. Not the kind that made the air heavier. The kind that made you sit down, alone, with yourself. He couldn't handle her silence, because in that silence, he heard himself. And he didn't like what he heard. There is a myth among men. That strength is sound. That to be powerful is to be dominant, loud, certain, final. But some of the strongest women I've ever met, they never had to shout. They just withdrew. And in that absence, they became a mirror. He didn't fear losing her voice. He feared seeing his reflection in her stillness. Because when she stopped explaining, stopped defending, stopped asking to be understood, he was left alone, naked, in front of the wreckage he never thought she'd walk away from. There's a kind of silence that invites. The kind that says, "Come sit with me. You don't have to prove anything here." And there's another kind, a colder one, that says, "You've already said enough." He confused the two, thought her silence was an opening. It wasn't. It was a door closing. Gently, finally, with grace. Most men don't know when they've crossed the line. Not because they're heartless, but because they were never taught to sit in silence long enough to feel the consequences of their own behavior. So when she fell silent, he thought it was a test, a game, something to win. He didn't realize it was grief. It was her mourning the version of him she once believed in. That's the thing about silence. It's not always anger. It's often mourning. But how do you explain mourning to someone who's never been quiet long enough to hear their own soul speak? There's a kind of woman who grows quieter as she gets older. Not because she's lost her voice, but because she's found her peace. She no longer tries to change you. She just observes. She watches. And when it's clear you won't meet her where she stands, she doesn't scream. She doesn't beg. She leaves. Silently. Completely. And with love. Not for you, but for herself. Long pause. You can almost hear him lean forward in his chair. He'll remember her silence long after he forgets her voice. Because that silence will echo in every empty room, every unanswered message, every "I'm fine" that never convinced him. He'll tell himself she was mysterious, hard to read, unreasonable, but deep down, he'll know. He'll know the silence wasn't about her being difficult. It was about her finally realizing he wasn't ready to listen. We live in a world that punishes silence. Fill the space. Talk faster. Answer now. Don't think. React. But silence is where the truth waits. And most people aren't ready for the truth, because truth demands stillness. And stillness demands presence. And presence demands you meet yourself. Naked. Unfiltered. Uncomfortable. He couldn't handle her silence because it meant he had to face himself. Without her words to protect him. Without her softness to absorb him. Without her love to excuse him. And so, he left. Or maybe she did. Either way, the silence remained. There's something haunting about a woman who no longer waits for you to change. something final, in the way she closes her heart without ever raising her voice. And yet, it's not bitterness. It's not revenge. It's not punishment. It's peace. But peace can feel like punishment to those who are addicted to chaos. He thought silence was absence, but hers was a presence too vast for his understanding. She didn't disappear. She expanded into books, into solitude, into women's circles and long walks and soft music, into prayer, into herself. And he stayed where the noise was, where truth couldn't touch him. One day, he might sit by his own fire. Older, wiser, perhaps, maybe not. And he'll remember the sound of her silence, how it filled the room without ever asking for space. And for a moment, he'll wish he had stayed. Not for her, but for the version of himself that only existed in her presence. But by then, her silence will have built a new world, one he can't enter, one that doesn't need